when ChatGPT first came about, I approached it like most people were like, another Google, really. Asked a question, it's not very good at that, And then you start to realize that it's a lot more like being a director of a theatre performance. And to do that well, you need to give it context. You need to say you're in the forest and there's a dark demon coming. You're setting up the world, right? And then once you've set up the world, you then say, what do you want the character to do, right? And I think what's really amazing is the fact that actually when the light went on that this is a material and less like a tool, I could start to give it more color.
Welcome to Zero Shot, everybody, the AI podcast without the hype. And we're built for one reason, and that's to be the source that you actually trust when it comes to AI and business. And every week, we're bringing you the conversations, the breakdowns, the honest analysis that help you make better decisions in a space that's moving incredibly fast. I'm James Gauci, the CEO of Cadent, and we build and govern AI systems in high-risk settings. This is episode 23, and as always, I'm joined by the Managing Director of Advancer, Mr. Llew Jury. How's it going, Llew?
Hi, James. Great to be here, and hello to everybody around the world, and a big welcome to anybody that's joining us for the first time. And, the noise around AI is generally overwhelming now, isn't it? It's just incredible. So what we do is we're helping businesses move the needle. We're all in this together. We're building Zero Shot for people that are looking for assistance. We're just two people, right, James, inside this industry every day.
I need a lot of assistance sometimes when it comes to AI, but
so do I. And it's about the clearest, most honest version of it, right? And that's what we're trying to deliver.
And we've actually got somebody in the room today who might be able to help us for a change. Today's a little bit different. We've got someone who actually builds AI products for some of the world's biggest brands at scale, and his name is Ben Cooper. He's the Global Executive Director of AI Products at RGA, one of the most respected creative companies in the world, and his story is pretty rare, actually. He started in sculpture and design, of all things, and became one of the early digital pioneers, went on to build some of the most original applied work in AI that this country's ever produced. The world's first AI-powered shark detection system, a bushfire detection product that was named most innovative in the country by the Financial Review. And so this is not someone just selling hype from the sidelines. This is someone who puts AI into real businesses every day with real clients and real consequences. Ben, it is our delight to welcome you to Zero Shot. It's a pleasure to have you on board here today.
Thanks, James, and thanks, Llew. It's good to meet you both.
It's awesome. Yeah, no, it's really special. And thanks for everybody for listening. And this is where we're going to take this one today. We're going to do 3 key moves that we're going to discuss with Ben, and we're going to get straight into it. We're going to get Ben's big idea. Most people are using AI for the lowest value thing it can do. We're going to talk about what the real value actually is, though, and hear from Ben at the highest levels of organizations globally. What's stopping the generating and starting the listening might actually be the most important shift that you can actually interpret. Then we're going to get practical, like we normally do. We always get practical, don't we, James? And Ben lives in the reality of putting AI into real businesses, so you can actually hear from real client stories and real budgets and what survives the contact with a boardroom, which is always interesting, and where it falls apart. And then we're going to close it out with a bit about the honest human reckoning underneath the whole conversation. So this is a good one. Let's get into it. But before we do, a quick shout out, James, to our sponsor.
Yep, this episode is brought to you by Cowboy. And when we talk about people actually adopting AI, one of the biggest blockers that we see in organizations is that people just don't know how to prompt properly. It's garbage in, garbage out at the end of the day. They'll open Claude or ChatGPT, they'll type in something vague, get a pretty mediocre result, and decide that AI isn't for them. But that's what Prompt Cowboy is designed to fix. They've got this awesome agentic prompting feature where you can actually build out a full prompt for your workflow before you put it into your agent of choice. So if you want your people to stop avoiding AI and get a bit more confident about it, get some results from it, go to promptcowboy.ai. It's a genuinely practical tool for teams going through exactly the kind of shift we're talking about today, Llew.
Yeah, and let's get into it. We normally do Tool of the Week, but we've got so much to talk about with Ben. We're going to jump that and go straight into intelligence as a material, aren't we? So, this is a critical piece. Ben, give us your first 60 seconds of what you've heard, what you're up to these days, and I suppose, what we should start looking at at the first base of AI in your world. But yeah, quick intro about what you're doing would be awesome for the listeners.
Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah, so I was brought into RGA just over a year ago, and we are focused on building an AI products team. What that really means is that we're looking to, in some ways, sort of like harvest our successes across the business. So for people that don't know, creative agencies are very good at sort of spinning up campaigns and creative outputs that then basically run once for a client, and then you sort of move on to the next amazing thing that you stand up. We see that there's a lot of patterns in that work that can be repeatable, and particularly when you look at things like AI, you can start to build infrastructure that sits underneath things and systems if you really think about it more openly. And we have a sort of mantra that sits across the business, which is we make things that make things. And I think this is very true of AI, and particularly when you think about generative AI. Importantly, what that means is that we can see the sort of patterns that exist in sort of successful campaign work, and we can start to build out the infrastructure that can be used again and again across the business. So our primary focus to begin with was actually looking at answer engines and, essentially the foundational models, and really the fact that a lot of brands are disappearing. I heard a quote the other day, which is 68% of brands are getting zero click now. It's basically, it's literally dropped off a cliff. And so we were pretty fascinated in how we could help brands turn up in answer engine. But in doing so, you start to understand how they need to turn up on the web as well. And the fact that, obviously you've got to have schemas and MD files that kind of make your brand machine readable. And that's ultimately kind of allowed us to sort of do a lot of future work. So from there, we went into things like story engine, which I'll happily decode for you. And then also we're looking at brand context protocol is what we're currently calling it at the moment, which is really the fact of how you encode a brand so it's machine readable, and it allows us to drive scale and personalization for clients in ways that were not previously possible.
Super cool. And Ben, in terms of the extrapolation of that to maybe listeners that are in the business world and things like that, like a business owner that is tuning in because of, we always sort of say, in the creative agency space and the larger sort of clients, they often are doing things that are different to small business, but that's not really the case these days, is it? Like the same fundamentals apply to those SMEs as they would to the RGA type clients. And, so for a business owner that is not in the creative world right now and doesn't, think they've got the budgets, and maybe is one of those ones that's getting the zero click, what are some of the things that already you can see that are parallels for everybody across any different sector, any size of business, any size of company, that also, are troubling the enterprise clients and the global clients?
Yeah.
And becoming the priorities. What's happening on a Monday morning everywhere you go?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question. I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I'm sort of break it down into a couple of zones, if that's all right. So
yeah, cool.
I think from an answer engine point of view, ironically, PR's back, for want of a better description. And I don't know about your behavior online, but I kind of behave like this anyway. I'd go to the brand website, I guess, for the facts, for the options, for the choices. But then I want to read all the reviews. What does it say on Reddit? What does it say on Trustpilot? What does it say in the comments? Now, actually, large language models work the same way. They're kind of like, they're a lot more interested in what everyone else is saying about the brand rather than what the brand's saying about itself. And in fact, it marks down marketing speak, for want of a better description. And it's interesting because we've got, there's muscle memory that goes one way, which is like simplifying things and those catchphrases, that we get to know, like just do it and think different and stuff like that. But ultimately, what the LLM's looking to do is to understand whether that's the right product to answer the questions you've asked in your models. So for SMEs, I think this is a wonderful thing. I think it's the fact that actually they should get out there. They should probably do things like, like this, but also importantly, kind of not be shy with kind of getting information out about their company in lots of different channels. It's really important to do that because it will help inform the language models. I think it gives them a fighting chance if they kind of really lean into that space. I think on top of that is the fact that actually they can encode their brand now. I think what you would probably face with a lot of sort of small businesses or even some SMEs, that marketing is sort of a nice to have, when in fact, actually, it's something that they can step forward into now, is the fact that actually you can encode your brand to a certain level that allows you to have a lot more confidence in building assets and that look okay. But ultimately, what we're looking to do is we're doing that on a industrialized level. So okay is not good enough for our clients. We're building essentially component libraries that live in Figma, and then they basically talk to Claude, and then they allow basically, in-house teams as well as our teams to kind of actually push things even further. I think what's really exciting though for small businesses is that you can step up now. You can have a crack, and and you don't, no doubt, have explored this on the show, is the fact that actually if you don't know something, ask your preferred LLM. It will talk you through it. So, and ultimately, there's never been a better time for knowledge in the sense of YouTube's a great font of knowledge, podcasts such as this. So I think importantly, I think we've all got a chance to kind of go towards things that perhaps we found challenging once before and go forward. So I hope that in part answers your question.
Yeah, that's probably a good jumping off point as well, because one of the things, because we had a short conversation before we scheduled this podcast, and one of the things that jumped out to me was your framing of intelligence as a bit of a raw material these days. And it's something that you can shape and build with. It's rather than just a tool that does something for you. It's kind of a material that you use,
Yes.
like something that you might sculpt with, for example. What I want is like for you to unpack that a little bit more, because it's certainly a unique take. And what changes for you when you start treating intelligence as something that you build with rather than something that you tap into or ask for?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, look, I think it's interesting, right? And I think perhaps, hopefully you'll nod along. I suppose when ChatGPT first came about, I approached it like most people, like another Google, really. Asked a question, it's not very good at that, And then you start to realize that it's a lot more like being a director of a theatre performance. And to do that well, you need to give it context. You need to say you're in the forest and there's a dark demon coming. I don't know why I'm going with this story, by the way.
It's great. Keep going. Yeah.
You're setting up the world, right? And then once you've set up the world, you then say, what do you want the character to do, right? And I think what's really amazing is the fact that actually when the light went on that this is a material and less like a tool, I could start to give it more color in the sense that they call it context engineering. Sometimes, I just call it just setting the scene for one of their description, and I think what's amazing is that a lot of these tools have memory now. So you don't always have to set the scene every time you pick up the project or pick up the thread. But importantly, you can come in and go, I've got this business dilemma. I'm in the business of selling widgets or whatever it is, this is my dilemma. Do I put prices up? Do I put them down? You're a Harvard business analyst with specialty in product packaging and pricing elasticity or whatever it might be. Please give me your 2 cents on how this is going. I want you to cite your sources and give me a more of a colorful output from it. And I think that to me is kind of more like a material than it is a tool. And I've actually purposely set up a couple of my models now to have custom instructions that push back on me, because I think sometimes I get into the habit of being a bit lazy and going, can you give me the answer to this? And can you generate that? And it would go, what do you actually want? And I'm like, oh, good. You're calling me out on my own behavior. And importantly, that gets me to better outcomes. I think importantly also, it by pushing me away, it makes me keep my agency. I think on the journey with AI from the beginning, there was points where I was kind of like lost in my outputs and I almost wasn't sure what I was creating anymore. And so importantly, it is about sort of pausing and taking a moment, because it's important that you're focused on the outcome, not the generation part. Because it is quite amazing when you sort of first start using these tools. And I think some people get hung up on, oh my God, did you see it just did that? And you say, yeah, but what's the point of that? Does it achieve anything for your business? Does it achieve anything for your company or for you? And that's the thing to hold yourself accountable to, as well as these incredible tools that at the moment are accessible to all of us.
Yeah, it's super cool, isn't it? And that reverse prompting, I love that reverse engineering and ask me questions and, tell me where I'm wrong. I think that, a lot of people, are moving on from sort of treating it like Google. And although there is still some people we have to do training for, Ben, these days that sort of need to be educated on that this is not Google. But what we talk about here is really around, that few shot examples or the chaining and the chunking and the reverse engineering. I think basically I'm not right. I'm still human in the lead. I'm not just a human in the loop, but tell me where I'm wrong. So I think, if execution is becoming commoditized, and we start to think about where the real value actually moves to, and how does a business protect those things. So it's quite interesting. I think we should move into the world of clients now and talk about what survives contact with a client. And it's quite an interesting space because are you still pitching? Are agencies still doing the madman style,
Yeah.
going,
Oh,
walking
yeah.
in there, John Hamm walks out and you've got the Ford account and all that sort of stuff. Is that still going on, or
It does, but it happens more like this now.
yeah, right? And what does that mean?
It's
Is that sort of like it's a flywheel, or is it more like a, you sort of, because I read B&T and I read Mumbrella and I
yeah, yeah,
read,
yeah.
this agency lost this and they're shelving this many staff, and then this agency won that and they're adding 50 staff. It's
Yeah.
been the same for 30 years. So
Yes.
what in AI survives contact with a client? Like, just give us a big picture of, winning business and what you're doing with, the pitching and all those different things.
Yeah, yeah. Pitching's still very much a thing, and RFPs are a constant grind, and also the pitch. I think what's it's sad in a way is not so much the sort of trolley with the whiskey on it, but more the importance of the sort of connection in the room. I think it is mostly happening on Zoom calls these days. Obviously, a lot of the time is people are working with people all around the world. That's exciting, and you can't be in the room. But I think when you can, it makes a world of difference because ultimately trust is still the thing that bonds everyone. Obviously, creativity is a powerful thing to trade when someone's looking to actually solve a problem. I
And
think what's
we're
interesting with-
social creatures, right? We're social creatures. We love that face to face if we can, and and especially with AI, it feels like it's really removed from all of that. So we kind of crave it at the moment with AI engagements in a way, and
I feel so. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it's vital. But ironically, a lot of the time is you've got remote workers, you've got remote pitches, you've got remote clients. That's more normal than it's not these days. So to answer your question, pitching's still very much a thing. I think AI is very interesting. I mean, RGA is a very uniquely shaped business. We're quite a specialist in many ways, and so I guess the thing is that not only do we solve problems through products and experiences and communications and brand, but we also solve them with sort of kind of creating tools that help clients have an unfair advantage. And so it's a very different proposition when you sort of walk into the room with things like that, where you've actually got your own IP that can make a difference too. I think the AI thing, it's tough, right? Everyone's at different levels. I mean, we talked a little bit about the fact that some people are still prompting it like Google and other people are understanding context. It's the same with the other things. So you've got, I remember when AI first came out and I wasn't working with RJ at the time. And I remember writing a policy for the business, which was basically like, don't touch AI. That was because everyone was just like, we can't possibly have any client information go onto this. We'll be liable for it. And that was the first signal most people got in the workplace, if you think about it. And obviously that immediately had a rush of like, I've got to use it. But it's the fact that you had to flag it to begin with. And then so everyone's walking back now. You've also got the fact that you've got conservative IT departments, depending on category. Finance, for example, extremely conservative, rightly so. And so they care greatly about what you're using, how you're using it, and all the things that live around that. You've also got other brands that are kind of like, gung-ho, and they're kind of like, let's lean into this. We're really keen to experiment with everything. You've got others which have strict, absolutely has to be humans shot in photography. And you've got others that are a little bit more lenient around that. And so we're finding lots of different recipes. We also advise on that as well. The ethical stance, some people, again, are very mature in this and others are not. Sometimes they want to bring their own models. Other times they want us to use ours. And so it's a very interesting time. It's, even the RFP questions these days are going into your abilities in this space, what tools you're using, what's the company's policies. I think what's interesting with us is, at the moment we're kind of using everything. We do have our enterprise accounts that we focus on, but we also, some of our tools can access up to sort of, 50 plus models that allow us to sort of experiment and really work out what the optimum way is to create what is envisioned in the sort of creative process.
Something you mentioned there was around the intersection between creativity and AI, and
yes,
the desire from a lot of people to retain the authenticity of and the human connection of any of their brand work or any of their content that they're creating, to ensure that they're not infringing on the ethics of the people that they depend on and have done historically, potentially. And you spoke about like conservative IT teams and training data. Like, we don't want our IP showing up in somebody else's model necessarily. When we were talking the other day, you said that you won't touch certain tools because you don't know what they were trained on. How big a deal is that becoming for the businesses that you're working with, and how are they making those kinds of calls? What are the decision-making processes they're going through? Is it as simple as, the IT manager said no and that was it? Or is it a little bit more sophisticated?
Yeah, I think that decision lives primarily with marketing, or mostly we're seeing that as far as actually how the brand turns up. I'll give you a couple of examples. I won't name the brands, but so we've got a fashion brand that we work with overseas. They, for example, will always do human shoots, but their contracts now allow those shoots to be slightly modified afterwards. That's not changing the characteristics of the person or anything like that, but it might be just moving the shot slightly so it works better in the creative, or allows for closer detail in the e-commerce experience, things like that. We also did a piece of work with our Latam team. They had a voiceover artist that was, I believe this is, was paid a bit more to basically have their voice trained into 11 labs, which allowed us to build content that was adaptive, that could actually respond in his tone of voice and things like that. So you're seeing that there's this maturity in sort of contracts, things that people are like, over my dead body, you're doing that, and it's kind of like, well, actually, people are quite happy to look at compromise. We're also finding some brands are like, can we just make synthetic backgrounds? We're really happy to do that. We also find products in particular are tough. I mean, you're getting, you're starting to see 3D being nailed now, but it's still a little bit early. I mean, if you've got very, very strong reference files, you can start to kind of push them a bit further. And we've done some experiments around that. But there is definitely a nervousness when it comes to a physical product and the fact of like the details that live within them. And I totally understand that. So I think it's like a sort of evolution that's happening in front of our eyes, because I think, it's funny when, innovation comes, I guess, is sometimes everyone's just like, the old way and the new way. And you're kind of like, well, actually, these two things coexist. And in fact, actually, it's always been like that. It's like, there's an electric car driving down the road, but there's an MGB next to it. It's just the way it is. And I guess the thing is, it's the fact that actually what we've got to do is sort of be mature about these conversations, think about the people that are involved. A lot of these brands are they're businesses at the end of the day. They're looking for efficiencies, but they're also looking at sort of pushing the creative envelope. They also have things that they actually believe in and are really true to their brand. I think we're also seeing the fact that actually there's different maturity around the world. In the States, there's a lot of hunger for AI. There is here too, but it's noticeably a little bit further behind with regards to actual execution. But we're getting there. And the good news is that the shape of our business allows us to sort of have that intelligence go everywhere across the business. So we're ready.
That's cool. And I suppose just for the listeners, and there's probably going to be listeners that tuning in that own agencies and own creative studios and, feel like they're being a little bit disrupted, but want to know how to compete in the markets, right? So there's this thing that we talk about called tool whiplash. There's lots of different whiplashes out there, isn't there? There's mental whiplash if you're giving too much advice, but this one's about tool whiplash. And tool whiplash basically is down to the RFP, the request for a proposal. A client might mandate a model or a tool, or we only want synthetic backgrounds, or certain things, and you kind of have to sort of go and work out whether it's a sunk cost or an opportunity cost, and who carries the cost. And we've had to do this in creative agencies and digital agencies for years, but with the acceleration of AI and the dabble that's happening, all the trials and the different models and all of that, it feels like sort of 20 years ago when, new versions of Photoshop or, Dreamweaver or something came in.
Yes.
How are you handling that? What advice have you got for people that are going for client work and having to get this whiplash of tools everywhere? Like, how can they deal with that?
Yeah. Look, I think there's a couple of ways to answer that question, but I think the first one is probably looking at how to break it down a bit. I firmly believe that we have to get away from time. as the way that things are sort of quantified in this industry. And we've been trying to do that for years, by the way. This is not a AI-led
True
thing.
value-based pricing. True
Yeah,
value.
100%. And FYI, every time I do value-based pricing, I get met with the procurement department going, "Can you break that down, please?"
Yeah.
And you're like, no, it's not how it works. But anyway, that's another story for another time. But I think what's interesting with this is you've got time, you've got tools, and you've got tokens. And the thing that's really interesting is the fact that actually the token part is a bit wild, right? And what I mean by that is the exploration, you can be hemorrhaging quite a bit until you sort of lock down what you're actually doing. I mean, we are, the build of Story Engine for us had a calculator built into it, so we could start to understand when we're stringing different models together, we could at least understand what a run would be. And then we could actually estimate a number of runs from that point onwards. The funny thing is, if let's say you're making a commercial with AI, it's a pretty hard thing to work out at the start line, right? And there's a maturing space with production companies in this area now. I'd be quite fascinated to know how they're estimating that, or there might be a kind of a cost that follows afterwards. We do our damnedest to sort of work out those parts of the puzzle. And you can do that with starting to kind of sort of plan out the shoot and all the elements that live around it. But ultimately, that sort of polish that needs to happen, which is not as pixel perfect as it used to be, right? It's the fact that the models are getting better, they're getting more directional, but at the same time, you're still sort of, nudging things in a direction rather than full control. And so I think it's a tricky conversation, but what I would encourage everyone is the fact that actually all of these relationships are built on trust. And I think the thing is, if you've got an idea that someone's fallen in love with, what you need to do is bring them into the room, and you need to talk through with transparency about all the touch points that live around it. The fact that actually there will be time to explore, to investigate, to do all the things that you expect from us. Make sure that, everything from the talent that we're featuring in the video is everyone's happy with that. Does it meet your diversity cues? Is it the fact, are we shooting? Are we not? And then on top of that, the tools. There might be stipulation that they don't want to use certain models because their IT team doesn't approve them. They might also stipulate you use their keys, by the way, which is the fact that you're plugging directly into their models. And then you've got tokens on top of that, whether it's sitting in your cost or it's using their models. And so I think the best approach is to bring everyone into a room and talk through this. I think what's sometimes tough, though, is that in this overwhelmed world that we live in, where time is very short, not everyone wants to go super deep on that stuff. So it's about really kind of finding ways to kind of make that a safe space for those conversations.
Do you find that ironic, Ben?
I do. I mean, I think the thing that's crazy, right? We were at Fever Pitch anyway. I mean, a previous agency I worked at, we worked on a massive bank here. And there used to be a code red briefs. And I remember looking up at one point going, I think we've been in code red for 6 months now.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't actually think we do anything other than code red.
We're always redlining. Always redlining. Yeah.
Always redlining.
Yeah.
And you sit there and I go, I don't think anything's changed. And I think AI is a bit like sort of throwing petrol on it, because there's this sort of unfair expectation that you sort of press a button and I can do it. And I had a social media startup for a while. And ironically, when we used to see people back, I used to have to explain what Facebook was to people, which is ridiculous. But anyway, I did. But I remember people would say, oh, my cousin is really good at shooting videos. Why are you charging us this? And you're like, it's the same thing, right? It's like, I vibe coded an app on the weekend. Why are you charging me this? It's like, well, we're going through a number of different phases to actually make sure that this is production proof and doesn't fall over and has any security vulnerabilities and all the other things that live around it. And I think this is the funny thing is it's a different evolution with a different technology, which is quite frankly amazing and gives us all incredible opportunities. But there's this sort of perception in the media that in some ways it's this kind of like, we don't need all this human staff anymore. And then on the flip side, there's the backlash that you speak about. There's the kind of like, get me away from this thing. And it's the tug of war. And actually, if you look at history, we always do this, by the way. We always like run towards it and then we run away from it and then we find the happy space. And then
the pendulum kind of swings and comes to rest. I mean, like something that you mentioned there was like value-based pricing and like how to get, how to articulate value and how to kind of have mature conversations about these very complex systems, frankly. How does owning the IP matter? And I suppose what I'm trying to get at is when you're having a conversation with a client and they're articulating to you what they want. And you're trying to ascertain the value that that might yield for them.
Yes.
And then you get into the conversation about, okay, so it's worth X amount to you. What is it worth for us to build that or do that or achieve that objective? What are the things that actually happen when it goes well, when you're talking about investment in AI? What are the things that happen when it doesn't go very well, and what are the outcomes? I suppose, what's that journey like, and what are the success factors and the fail states of that journey and conversation?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. Look, I suppose the thing to remember is we solve problems with creativity. And so it's not always, people don't stand at the door going, can you use AI for this? It's, some do, by the way, but most are like, I've got a problem. My numbers are down. My brand is perceived as this, and I want it to be perceived as this. We want to appeal to a Gen Z audience and make sure that we've got a runway for that. And so this is really where creativity steps in. And the fact is that, we're looking at insights and understanding. Our strategy team goes into a hole and starts looking at that. What's great now is the strategic process now has tools that can help with interviewing lots of humans. Equally, it can go into a corpus of synthetic data and start to get understanding too. And what's incredible is, these companies have gone and indexed the world for us. So we can kind of get to a start quite quickly with regards to a territory and things like that. But then we might want to validate that with, research groups and everything that sits around that. Then from there, it's really having an idea that starts to solve that problem. Now, what's unique with us, or I believe is unique with us, is we have a number of different AI tools and capabilities that can help some of those ideas come to life a lot faster or a lot bigger or with a lot more scale. But ultimately, it's still the idea that connects and solves the problem that the client buys. And then you're sort of shifting to execution. I think what's interesting now is, and we're very lent into this, and I think you'd probably find this quite common, is that we're sort of communicating with demos. And whereas before, let's say it's a piece of content, you'd probably have some scamps and a mood board from some other things and a script that's read out loud to the client. And then they have to imagine it. Now you can actually kind of put a spec ad together, for want of a better description. I know a number of production companies get really annoyed about this because they're kind of like, we can't shoot that, because the intention might be to do a full human full AI ads, but
it's like our prototyping tools have
100%.
Gone absolutely berserk, and the bandwidth of our communication at the ideation and collaboration stage, the very front end, is just supercharged right now, isn't it?
You're absolutely right, James. And equally with apps and experiences, because we've sort of invested quite a lot in our tooling, we can stand up demos pretty quick. And so what I love is the fact that actually there's no, are you understanding this? It's like they're actually clicking it. They're actually using it. They're actually prodding it. And I believe that that's a greater exchange of understanding. Ironically, the context is clearer, right? Whereas the beautifully shaped PowerPoint presentation, Keynote, or Google Slides, or whatever you use, you're still hoping everyone understands what you're talking about. Whereas actually you go, you know what, we've solved your problem with a dynamic interface that builds around you. Let's not just talk about it. You use it now. Really, I can use it now. Yeah, you use it now.
It's a show don't tell kind of conversation.
100%. Yeah. And I've got this belief that sort of tangibility makes ideas unstoppable. And I've seen that play out in my whole career. Is the minute we can actually kind of make it tangible, everyone's kind of like, well, what's stopping us getting this out there? And it might be a couple of million, you never know. But ultimately, it's bravery, it's time, budget, and the things that kind of move it forward. But I think creativity is alive and well in solving problems. It's just that we've got an incredibly new material to work with.
Pretty cool, isn't it? And we might dive into our final component of what we're going to talk about today, and it's kind of like the positives and the negatives that we're seeing out there, and what you're seeing in the markets, Ben, in terms of the booing at the universities with some of the leaders of our largest LLMs and frontier models, and data centers being picketed on a Tuesday by kids that organised on TikTok and with the placards and things like that. So there's
my favorite was Ronnie Cheng getting up at I don't know which university it was, but basically using his entire allotted speech to discredit AI entirely.
Yeah.
And to uproarious applause,
Yeah.
it's a sign of our times that there's such a strong reaction to such an influential technology, isn't it?
It is, mate. And look, it's this genuine tension between like those that are loving it and those that are like Ben today, describing how they're embracing it for amazing, life-changing projects that are amazing in terms of the globe, and then respecting the people through the human shift that are really feeling a little bit anxious by it. What's your thoughts, Ben? Would love to know your high-level orchestration, I suppose, between those two, the pivot between the tension of all the goodness you see and some of the things that people might be feeling out there.
I can speak from lived experience here, by the way. I did a talk at UTS on AI, and I didn't get boos, but I got a pretty quiet room. I also got everyone sat at the back, and I had to move them to the front before I said I wouldn't start until they moved to the front.
Were they students? What years? Undergrads or grads, or what was it?
It was years 2 and 3 in design communication, specifically at UTS here in Sydney. I've got a long-standing relationship with them. I've done sort of like innovation training there and stuff like that. But it was interesting because my talk was about the new material, and my talk was about the fact that actually, how incredible is this that you've entered the workplace with this as your material? Like my material was like CD-ROMs to start with, and then it was the internet, and I love that material. I've sort of run with it. I was sort of excited that this was something that they got to define, that they got to make into something that perhaps none of us had seen before. And they were, in fact, even some of the tutors were a bit anti it. They were like, "We've noticed your presentation could have been done by an illustrator," and I was kind of like, "Yeah, I know, but I didn't have a budget for an illustrator. And by the way, you're not paying me, so my point was, and I think hopefully this narrative's come through. Is your personal agency with this tool is where it's going to take you somewhere amazing. The minute you think this tool is going to replace you, then that's silly talk. And I know I know there's a lot of jobs in the world that actually will be touched by this, where perhaps it is an administrative role, and I do understand the impacts of that. I think importantly, right now, and this will change, there isn't a person that can't play with this. The free versions of this are accessible to the planet right now. You can use it. We're probably subscribers. We might even be paying a bit more than just the pro accounts.
Heavy subscribers.
There you go. And I guess
the bill that we get from AWS says that we're pretty heavy users.
Yeah, that's right. and so I think importantly, I think the backlash is always needed because it's a correction in many ways. I mean, when electronic music sort of came out, there's a lot of traditional musicians that were absolutely vehemently against it. And now you could argue it's just a part of the tapestry of life, right? It's just, it's just another instrument.
What did they get right? It's almost like we have to go through this conversation. We can't avoid it any longer. There are some corners of the community who would love to never talk about it. There are some areas where firmly held and sometimes unjustifiably firmly held views are being espoused. What do you think the people that are pushing back are getting right now? And what did the backlash against EDM, for example, dance music?
Yeah.
What did that do for music? And how did that lead to a better outcome for everyone, potentially?
Yeah, I mean, the music questions, it democratized music, right? It meant that people in their bedroom could actually bring to life music that they had in their heads because they didn't know how to play instruments. I think this is a little bit more akin to electricity than an instrument, though, in the sense that it's all pervasive. However, I do think you're seeing people that, I mean, like even my own journey, like, I've always worked with techies. I did used to code a little bit, but, I'd have to write a technical specification, which no one would read. And then the client would sign it off and then everyone would understand the technical data. Then we'd do wireframes and everyone would sign the wireframes off and then we'd do the coding and then we'd stand up. And guess what? The thing was out of date by the time we got the thing out. But that sign off and then Agile came about and the fact that you kind of move a bit swifter. But again, right now, you or I can stand up an app concept or an experience on the phone, on the bus, on the way to the meeting, have a chat with the engineering team that you're meeting and go, I'm thinking it's something like this. They can then improve it, push it, shape it, take it further. And I think that's really exciting. But it feels like I'm going back to the original, the question from the second part.
So what do you think the people that are pushing back right now might be getting right? Like where do
So
they
I think what they're
deserve
getting
credit?
right is I think the truth is, these models have trained on people's works. Fact. They have trained on art and literature and all the things that we had out in the open. The irony is that small print that all of us ignored when we're the terms and conditions, that's where it said this data is basically available, and that's what's played out, is the fact that actually that understanding is there. So on one side, we've got the biggest research group database we've ever had in our lives at our fingertips, depending on the question we ask it. And on the flip side, you've got the fact that a lot of people are like, well, hang on a minute, that's my work. I mean, interestingly, the other day I was trying to put an image into my personal website, and it was from a talk that I did for someone else, and they'd used an image and it would not let me.
Yeah.
It was from a film, and I was really pleased to see that, actually. And I kept trying to work around it, and I was going, actually, it's right, I'm wrong. But I had the image from a PowerPoint, and so I think they're getting it very right. I mean, I think England has been particularly strong in this space. You've seen a lot of the musicians come together, a lot of the writers come together, obviously Hollywood. And I think it's more about having a fair go. And so you're seeing the fact of models like, Adobe's Image Library, Getty, Shutterstock, etc. They have got those ethics built in. They are creating business models that allow the stimulus to actually give the original photographer some money back, albeit a small portion. Those models have moved on. And so I think they're getting it right that they're pushing back. I mean, do you remember, I think it was Elon Musk and a load of people in the early days had like there's a letter that went out about pausing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I signed that.
In 2023. Yeah.
Not long ago. Yeah.
And I signed that. I was like, I don't think we're quite ready for this. And then I guess what we saw was the action with Fable and Mythos, literally, what was it, a week ago, where the US government has sort of, acted on that. And you kind of sit there going, the marketing hype around Mythos was it will literally take out, we're releasing it very slowly to some select people. And then meanwhile, someone purported that they jailbroke the thing. So I think the industry is actually screaming for regulation. I think this pushback, what they're getting right is pushing back. I think the thing is we do need to stand up and preserve what is right for us. But at the same time, I think we are also sitting on top of something that can do an incredible amount of good in the world.
It's the bell that I rang last week, and I often find myself ringing, which is, and to bring it back to the sheer fact that in Australia we have the lowest levels of trust in AI
100%.
on the planet, and we're fine with doing something with AI, but we want to know who's paying for it, and we want to know who's going to pay for it when it goes wrong, and we don't want to, like, we know that these things can go wrong because they have gone wrong, and I don't. Can
I ask you a question, James?
Yeah.
See, so I know that too, right? And it's quite mad, right? Because, I mean, obviously you can probably tell from my accent, I'm originally from the UK, but one of the things I always saw in Australia was actually we're good early adopters, actually. Like genuinely we are. Like actually working in the innovation space here was amazing. There's always people pushing the edges, and as a nation, I think we've got a natural propensity for that. I find it quite fascinating that we are the most untrusting of AI in the world. And why do you think that is? I mean, I know you haven't got
I question without notice. I always notice. But my take on that is basically that as a society that has made its money in highly regulated, quality-focused industries throughout our society, we look at something as uncertain and volatile as a probability-based system that gets things wrong, that is run by people who are ostensibly about maximizing the size of their $1 trillion money pile.
Yes.
And we go, I don't think so. It doesn't pass the pub test,
Going for
I think you're right. I think sovereign AI, I'm getting into a lot of conversations about this at the moment. I'm a great believer in. And I think the sovereignty of your business, the sovereignty of the country, it's important. We're getting our Kool-Aid from an overseas LLM that can be turned off, as we've seen, in a moment's notice.
I've just seen on that this afternoon that Blackbird, the VC firm, have just put some money in their biggest check ever. Michael Tollo came out on my LinkedIn and said that biggest check ever into Base 10. And Base 10 just raised 1.5 billion Series F, and effectively that's at a $13 billion valuation. And what are they doing? everything we just described, but they're not a
Yeah.
Chinese open weight model. So we've
Yeah.
got the frontier models, we've got the Chinese open weights that a lot of startups are using because they're 80% cheaper. And now
Yes.
we've got the base 10s that are actually allowing product teams and dev teams to actually build in on their own training data or their own models and actually keeping it sovereign within the organization. So that's probably a really good way to finish this particular part. And let's do quick whip around. Instead of doing takeaways today, we're going to do the 0 shot fast 5, the rapid fire. And, this is for Ben to do a little bit of a round and this is speed and instinct. Ben hasn't seen these questions.
Questions without notice for you, Ben.
Questions that
wish me luck, everyone.
So I'm going to kick it off and then James is going to do the next one and so forth. So, all right, Ben, here we go. What's the one thing you'd tell a business owner who is just getting started with AI?
Subscribe to a different model every single month for 6 months.
Awesome. Over to you, James.
What AI tool do you use every day?
You know what? It's changing. I am in love with Claude at the moment. And just to be clear, I've only really been on Claude properly for the last month. Used ChatGPT extensively and Gemini. Couldn't live without Notebook LM. I love it for building context. And I have to keep reminding myself to sometimes go back to it, though. I keep forgetting. But it's really good in Gemini in the sense I can tag a notebook into a prompt and it allows me to sort of work in our work environment. So that's not one tool, that's 3 or 4.
What is the one prediction you have about AI that hasn't happened yet, but you believe that it will?
I think we're going to get freaked out how much tokens actually cost.
Agree. 100%.
Where do you get your AI knowledge from, Ben? Is it books? Is it podcasts? Is it reading articles?
It's podcasts. I've listened to you guys. I also listen to the AI Daily Brief, which I find a pretty good way to kind of get up to speed quickly. That's if I'm driving. I tell you what actually is a good hack is Perplexity has a discovery tab and it's very tailored to me. And I don't so much use the model. I use the model sometimes when I'm doing research, but I use it a lot for reading the news actually. And then I actually have a community that I've built called Last Friday, which is 2.5 years on now, and there's the people that are in there are remarkable, and so our current conversations a lot about sovereign AI. A lot of people are building their own machines at the moment, which I find fascinating. Might be a little bit too far for me personally at the moment, but I'm still so I get a lot from them. And then actually LinkedIn, ironically, I think just the people that I follow. I tell you what, actually Grok's quite good sometimes because it's got obviously an unfair relationship with Twitter or X.
Yeah. You
can sort of actually get quite a lot of knowledge from there. I wouldn't recommend doing much more than using it for knowledge, but it's an outlier that I often go, hang on a minute, I reckon Grok's probably got some sites on that.
Some good tips there. And final question, who do you think we should bring to this pod?
To have this type of conversation?
Always. We go pretty deep. But we're friendly.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a few people actually. I mean, do you want them to be in Australia?
Just a couple of names. Yeah. Australia, overseas, doesn't really matter. Yeah.
There's a great guy, Ian McDonald. I can send you some stuff, guys. So Ian McDonald's a friend. He's a serial founder.
Awesome.
He's the guy building the AI under his desk at the moment.
Yeah, right.
But also is an incredible knowledge in his own right. He's just down the road, actually. There's some people I know in Hawaii and San Francisco, which I think would be very interesting for you that are very focused on sort of workflows and Claude. Barbara Javon, I can't pronounce the surname, but I probably could if I could see it. But
How good. How good. Well, look, thank you. They're great. Thank you very much for that Fast 5. So that was awesome. So yeah, look, next episode, we're going right back to the start, process automation from scratch. And for anybody that knows, that they should be automating parts of their business and has no idea where to start or go or what to do, what it actually is, whether it's workflow, AI, automation, the most common mistakes people are, making at the time. And if you ever looked at automation and thought this is way bigger and this is actually for more larger technical teams, well, this one's for you. So we're going to see you then.
And thanks again to our sponsors, Prompt Cowboy, promptcowboy.ai. If today's session with Ben made you think about how to actually get your team using AI properly and thinking about it deeply, check out their agentic prompting feature. It's the practical starting point that a lot of organizations are missing. So trot on over to Prompt Cowboy.
Yeehaw. And look, thank you, Ben. Final remarks from you It's been awesome having you on here. We're going to have to get you on again, of course. So thank you very much.
No, thank you both. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. And yeah, I hope to continue the conversation. I think it's a burgeoning space. I think it amazes me every day. Something that maybe you want to look up afterwards. I don't know if you've seen Midjourney's pivot to Midjourney Medical. Worth having a look at. Fascinating space.
One thing we didn't talk about, what was the Gold Coast guy? You know, the full AI.
Yeah, Bruce Ryder.
Bruce Ryder. Everybody's got to check out Bruce Ryder. And what was the lab or whatever they've created around it? Is it a she's an influencer. Is it a lady or is it
so Miss M is basically the creative that brought Bruce to life. But Bruce is basically an AI talk show host.
Yeah, and he's fully AI. I love it. And he's real Gold Coast. He's real Miami, GC.
100%.
Like, I want to get it. I'm going to get a t-shirt. I'm going to get a t-shirt or a cap because I love caps.
You should definitely get Emma on.
Yeah, we should get Emma on. There we go. There's another hot tip. Well, look, thank you for joining Zero Shot today. This has been awesome having Ben. And look, you know, not just for the listening, but for staying with us all the way through. This means everything to us and keeps this show going, right, James?
Yeah, that's right. We want to give you the right information delivered straight up at the right time. And we think that's what can change an entire generation of business leaders and help them navigate this AI revolution. That's what we show up to do every week for the builders, the skeptics, the strategists, everyone in between who are trying to make sense of this space and are actually moving the needle in their industries. That's who this is for. That's why we're here.
Yeah, cool. And so if there's anything that you're confused about, if there's a topic you cannot find a straight answer on, if you thought today, gee, you know, they're talking in acronyms again, and, you know, tell us, leave a comment, send us a message, drop us a line, wherever you find us. Yenia and you know, all of us will read everything because you're part of it, really. It's about you.
Yeah, 100%. And if today was useful for you, and we genuinely hope it was, the best thing you can do for us right now is give us a follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you're listening right now. It doesn't cost you anything, and it's what keeps our mission alive. So find us on LinkedIn as well. Search for Zero Shot there. Follow Llew Jury and James Gauci and Ben Cooper, of course. While you're there. And we're also on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. There's weekly short form content as well. So if you find that you're stuck for time, you can just take a look at a couple of our reels and that kind of thing. And if there's someone in your world who's trying to navigate AI right now and feeling overwhelmed by it, share this episode with them, and especially if they're in the agency game like Ben is. And also, if you have other guests that we should be talking to, pop those in the comments as well. Give them an @ mention and send them our way. We'd love to talk to them.
Awesome. Thanks, James. Thanks, Ben, especially for being an amazing guest. And one more final shout out to Yenia Larotta, our amazing producer. So stay sharp, stay sovereign, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks, folks.
Right. Thanks so much, guys.